At my son's wedding, my daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and said, "We only invited special people," after I'd paid $33,000 of their bills for 3 years. I realized I wasn't special enough. That's when I decided to show them exactly what happens when you lose someone truly special. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there in my living room holding the pale pink dress I'd bought specifically for Tyler's wedding, the matching shoes still in their box, and a sealed envelope containing $1,000 that was meant to be their wedding gift. All of it suddenly felt like props in a play I'd never been invited to perform in. Madison's voice echoed in my mind as I stared at the social media photos that had started flooding my feed. There she was, in her bright white dress, the same dress I'd helped finance with an $800 emergency just a month earlier. Her parents beamed proudly beside the happy couple. Her siblings raised champagne glasses in celebration. The photographer had captured every smile, every embrace, every moment of joy. Everyone was there except the woman who'd made it all possible. I didn't cry that night. Instead, something cold and calculating settled in my chest. If numbers were the only language they respected, then I was about to become fluent in a way that would teach them the true value of losing someone special. What Madison and Tyler didn't fully understand was exactly who they'd just dismissed. My name is Evelyn Hart, and I'm 72 years old. But more importantly, I spent 43 years as a senior bookkeeper at Henderson & Associates, one of the city's most prestigious accounting firms. Numbers aren't just my hobby, they're my expertise. Financial strategy isn't something I dabble in. It's literally how I built my career. When my husband Robert passed 5 years ago, he left me with more than just grief. He left me with a meticulously planned financial portfolio worth just over $480,000, plus a fully paid-off house, valued at another $320,000. Robert had been a financial planner himself, and together we'd spent decades building what was supposed to be a comfortable retirement. We'd planned for inflation, healthcare costs, potential emergencies, everything except our only son treating us like a personal ATM. But here's what Tyler and Madison had never bothered to learn about me. I don't make financial decisions emotionally. When my husband was nearing the end, I'd already run comprehensive calculations on exactly how much I could afford to help Tyler while still maintaining my own security. The magic number was $15,000 maximum over 5 years. I'd exceeded that amount by more than double in just 3 years. More importantly, I still had all the documentation. Every bank transfer, every receipt, every text message where they'd asked for help. I'd kept meticulous records because that's what 43 years of professional bookkeeping trains you to do. I had spreadsheets tracking their requests, categories for their various emergencies, and a running total that I updated monthly like clockwork. 4 decades in accounting had introduced me to lawyers, financial advisors, and business owners throughout the city. I knew which attorneys specialized in elder rights, which banks offered the best fraud protection services, and which services could help seniors protect themselves from financial exploitation. Most importantly, I had a professional reputation that meant people took my calls seriously. I also had something that had served me well throughout my career: patience. While Tyler and Madison operated on immediate gratification, I understood the power of methodical planning. They wanted instant solutions to their problems. I preferred strategies that created lasting consequences. The real advantage I possessed was something they'd never bothered to consider. I was still mentally sharp. My last cognitive evaluation, required by my insurance company just 6 months earlier, had shown results above average for my age group. I had documentation proving my competence, my financial stability, and my decision-making capacity. If they wanted to play games about my mental state, I had professional verification that I was operating from a position of clarity, not confusion. The morning after seeing those wedding photos, I pulled out my laptop and opened the file I'd been maintaining. I spent the next 3 hours creating what I called my financial impact assessment, a comprehensive breakdown that would have impressed any auditor. Rent payments, $500 monthly for 36 consecutive months. That was $18,000 right there. I had automatic transfer confirmations for every single payment, along with screenshots of their grateful text messages each month. Grocery allowances averaging $200 monthly for the same period, another $7,200. I documented this by photographing receipts every time I'd stocked their refrigerator, creating a digital folder organized by date and store. Birthday gifts, Christmas presents, anniversary celebrations, roughly $3,000 in carefully chosen items they'd specifically requested. I had photos of every gift, along with their thank you messages expressing how much they needed each item. Madison's supposed medical emergency last year, $800. I'd kept the original request email where she'd claimed it was urgent surgery, though I later discovered through her social media posts that it had been cosmetic lip fillers. The car loan I'd covered when Tyler promised he'd take over the payments, $2,500. I had the original loan documents, his written promise to reimburse me, and bank records showing he'd never made a single payment, furniture for their living room when they'd complained about having nowhere to sit, $200. I still had the delivery receipts and photos of the furniture in their apartment, even small things like their air conditioner repair, $600. Emergency plumbing, $340. Madison's work clothes for job interviews she never attended, $280. The final tally staring back at me from my monitor was $33,400. But I didn't stop there. I calculated the opportunity cost, what that money would have earned in my conservative investment portfolio over the same period, another $2,100 in lost returns. I documented my own sacrifices during this period. Meals skipped, clothing purchases delayed, home repairs postponed, the total impact on my quality of life. Immeasurable, but financially quantifiable at roughly $4,800 in deferred personal expenses. I picked up my phone and dialed the first number on my strategic contact list. Mrs. Hart? The voice belonged to Patrick Green, an attorney who'd handled several complex cases for clients at my former firm. I haven't heard from you since Robert's estate was finalized. How can I help? Patrick, I need advice about protecting myself from financial exploitation. Do you have time to meet this week? Of course. Can you give me a brief overview of the situation? I summarized the wedding exclusion and the years of financial support in my most professional tone. Patrick listened without interruption, then asked the question I'd been hoping to hear. Do you have documentation of these transfers and requests? Complete records going back 3 years, including screenshots of text messages, copies of every bank transfer, receipts for purchases, and a comprehensive financial impact analysis. Excellent. Elder financial abuse cases hinge on documentation, and it sounds like you're already ahead of most people in that regard. Let's meet Thursday morning and go through everything systematically. My second call was to First National Bank, where I'd maintained accounts for over 20 years. Mr. Donnelly, the branch manager, had processed every one of those automatic transfers and probably watched my savings account shrink month after month. What can I do for you today, Mrs. Hart? I need to cancel every automatic transfer to my son's account immediately, and I want to discuss enhanced security measures for my accounts. His tone became more serious. Of course. Are you experiencing any pressure to maintain these transfers against your wishes? Not pressure, Mr. Donnelly. I'm simply done funding adults who don't consider me special enough to invite to their wedding. I understand completely. Let me walk you through our enhanced security options. We can require in-person verification for any account changes, add additional authentication steps for large transfers, and flag any attempts to add new authorized users. Within an hour, every automatic transfer had been canceled. I also opened a new savings account at Community Credit Union as a backup security measure, transferring $50,000 to ensure I had resources they couldn't access even if they somehow compromised my primary accounts. The third call was to my doctor's office. If Tyler and Madison decided to challenge my decision-making capacity, I wanted recent medical documentation ready to defend myself. Dr. Patricia Moore's office, this is Janet. This is Evelyn Hart. I need to schedule a comprehensive cognitive evaluation and general health assessment. I may need the documentation for legal purposes. Of course, Mrs. Hart. Dr. Moore has an opening next Tuesday. Should I note this as a priority appointment? Yes, please, and I'll need written copies of all test results. Thursday morning arrived with Tyler calling my phone repeatedly. I let every call go to voicemail, then listened to the messages with growing satisfaction. The first one was confused. "Mom, the rent payment didn't go through. Can you call the bank?" The second showed frustration. "Mom, seriously, we need to talk about this payment issue." By the fourth message, desperation had crept in. "Mom, please call me back. We're going to be evicted if we don't resolve this." At Patrick's office, I spread 3 years of documentation across his conference table like evidence in a criminal case. Bank statements, text message screenshots, receipts for furniture and gifts, even the email exchange where Madison had asked me to cover her emergency medical procedure that I later discovered was cosmetic work. Patrick examined each document methodically, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "This is extraordinary documentation, Mrs. Hart. Most people in your situation have fragments of evidence. You have a complete financial narrative. 43 years of bookkeeping habits die hard. Here's what I recommend. First, we file paperwork formally blocking any future access to your accounts. Second, we prepare a comprehensive response in case they attempt to challenge your competency. Third, we document any harassment or attempts to manipulate you going forward." "What about the money they already received?" Patrick smiled grimly. "Gifts can't be legally reclaimed, but if they pursue guardianship or try to claim you're incompetent, this documentation proves they've been systematically exploiting an elderly person. That changes the entire legal landscape in your favor." He pulled out a thick folder. "I'm going to give you a packet of forms to complete. These establish a paper trail showing your competence and decision-making capacity. We'll also prepare a formal cease and desist letter if they attempt to harass you about resuming payments." That afternoon, I drove to Ramirez Hardware, a small shop where I'd purchased various items for Tyler's apartment maintenance over the years. Gus Ramirez greeted me with his usual friendly smile. "Another emergency with your son's place, Mrs. Hart?" "Not this time, Gus. This time it's for me. I need the best locks you have, and I want them installed today." His son, Leo, who handled their security installations, overheard our conversation. "We can set up cameras too, Mrs. Hart. You'll be able to see who approaches your door right from your phone." "Perfect. I want a complete system. Cameras, motion sensors, and locks that can't be picked or forced." Leo spent 2 hours installing a comprehensive security system that would have impressed a bank. When he finished, I had cameras covering every approach to my house, motion-activated recording, and locks that required both a key and a digital code to open. "This system will send alerts directly to your phone," Leo explained. "You'll know immediately if anyone approaches your property, and all footage is automatically backed up to cloud storage." For the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely secure. I was protecting myself instead of constantly protecting everyone else. 2 days later, I was reviewing financial statements when my new security system chimed. 3 cars had pulled into my driveway: Tyler's sedan, Madison's SUV, and a silver Mercedes I didn't recognize. Through the camera feed, I watched them march toward my front door with the confidence of people who expected to take control. I called Patrick immediately. "They're here with someone I don't recognize. Should I let them in?" "Absolutely not. Tell them to leave immediately and record everything. If they refuse to leave, call the police." I opened the door but kept the security chain engaged. "You need to leave my property immediately." Madison pushed forward. "Evelyn, we need to talk. This is Mr. Fenton, an attorney we've consulted about your situation." "My situation?" I kept my tone level. I'm perfectly fine, thank you, and you're trespassing. Tyler looked up with an expression I'd never seen from my son before, calculated and rehearsed. Mom, we're worried. You've been acting strange, cutting us off financially without explanation, ignoring our calls. We think you might need help managing things. Mr. Fenton stepped forward with a practiced smile. Mrs. Hart, your children are concerned about your well-being. A temporary power of attorney would allow them to help manage your finances until things stabilize. I closed the door and called the police. Within 10 minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived. Officer Jackson took my statement while his partner spoke with Tyler, Madison, and their attorney. Ma'am, do you want these people on your property? Absolutely not. They're attempting to gain unauthorized access to my financial accounts. You heard the lady, Officer Jackson told them. You need to leave immediately. Any further contact should go through attorneys. As they drove away, I felt a surge of satisfaction. They'd expected to intimidate me into compliance, but instead they'd been escorted off my property by police. The beautiful thing about having professional experience is understanding how to build an unshakable case. Over the next week, I methodically gathered evidence that would make any challenge to my competence look ridiculous. Dr. Moore's cognitive evaluation took 3 hours and covered memory, reasoning, problem-solving, and decision-making capacity. Her written report concluded that I showed above-average cognitive function for my age group and excellent judgment and decision-making capacity. She also noted that I showed no signs of depression, anxiety, or any mental health issues that might impair my judgment. I visited Aaron Blake, the pharmacist at my local drugstore, where I'd been filling prescriptions for over a decade. I asked him to prepare a written statement confirming my prescription history. Mrs. Hart, your records show only vitamin supplements and occasional aspirin. You don't take any medications that would affect cognitive function or judgment. I contacted Mrs. Whitfield, my next-door neighbor, who'd witnessed some of Tyler and Madison's more dramatic visits to my house. She was happy to provide a written statement about my independence and clear thinking. Evelyn is one of the most organized and thoughtful people I know, she wrote. She maintains her home beautifully, manages her own finances, and has never shown any signs of confusion or impairment. The most satisfying call was to my former supervisor at Henderson and Associates. Margaret had retired 2 years after me, but she remembered my work ethic and attention to detail. Evelyn Hart was one of our most meticulous bookkeepers. She wrote in a professional reference letter I requested. Her attention to financial detail and ethical judgment were exemplary throughout her career. I would trust her with my own financial decisions without hesitation. I also contacted 3 other neighbors, my hairdresser, and the manager at my grocery store, all people who interacted with me regularly and could testify to my competence and independence. But Tyler and Madison weren't finished. The following Tuesday morning, my security system announced another visitor. Through the camera, I saw a professional woman in a navy blue suit carrying an official-looking folder. Good morning, Mrs. Hart. I'm Ms. Carver, a social worker with the county. We received a report that you may be in a high-risk situation. I'm here to conduct a wellness check. My stomach clenched as I realized how far Tyler and Madison had escalated. They'd involved government services, trying to create an official record of my supposed incompetence. May I see your identification, please? I asked through the door. She showed me credentials that appeared legitimate. I let her inside, but before she could begin her evaluation, I made one phone call. Patrick, I need you here immediately. The county is at my door. Don't answer any questions until I arrive. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Within 20 minutes, Patrick sat across from Ms. Carver while I laid out the comprehensive documentation we'd prepared. Medical evaluations showing cognitive competence, financial records demonstrating sound decision-making, professional references confirming my judgment and ethics, a complete timeline of Tyler and Madison's financial requests, and my methodical responses. What you see here, Patrick explained, is not cognitive decline. This is a woman making informed decisions to protect herself from financial exploitation. Miss Carver reviewed every document, then closed her folder. Mrs. Hart, I see no indication that you're at risk or incompetent. I'll be closing this case immediately and noting in my report that this appears to be a family financial dispute rather than an elder care issue. When she left, I felt vindicated. They'd tried to paint me as a confused elderly woman, but evidence had spoken louder than their accusations. Unfortunately, their desperation drove them to even more extreme measures. Patrick called me the following Friday with news that made my hands tremble. Tyler and Madison have filed a formal petition in family court. They're asking a judge to declare you mentally incompetent and assign Tyler as your legal guardian. The paperwork he faxed over was devastating in its implications. They wanted complete control over my finances, my medical decisions, and my living arrangements. In essence, they were trying to legally erase my autonomy as an adult. They claim you've shown erratic behavior, Patrick explained. They have 3 witnesses lined up: Madison herself, your neighbor Mr. Connors from across the street, and surprisingly, Aaron Blake from the pharmacy. I was stunned. Aaron Blake? But he just told us I only purchase vitamins and aspirin. We need to talk to him immediately. The next morning, we visited the pharmacy. Aaron's face went pale when I asked about his statement to Tyler and Madison. Mrs. Hart, I was completely misled, he confessed. Your daughter-in-law told me she needed information for an insurance form. I mentioned that you only bought vitamins and aspirin, no prescription medications. Somehow that got twisted into proof you were neglecting necessary medical treatment. He immediately wrote a correction letter for our legal file, stating clearly that I had no prescription medications and showed no signs of cognitive impairment during our regular interactions. Mr. Connors proved less cooperative. When we approached him about his statement, he became defensive. You installed security cameras like you're living in a war zone, he complained, and I've heard you yelling at your family in the street. What he characterized as yelling had actually been me firmly telling Tyler and Madison to leave my property after they'd attempted another unannounced financial ambush. But Mr. Connors had never liked me, primarily because my occasional visitors sometimes parked near his driveway. Patrick wasn't concerned. One hostile neighbor against a mountain of evidence showing competence, that's not going to be enough. The court hearing was scheduled for the following month. Patrick spent the intervening weeks building what he called an overwhelming case for competence. We gathered additional character references, compiled financial records showing sound decision-making, and prepared testimony from medical professionals. Here's our strategy, Patrick explained. We're not just defending against their claims. We're going on the offensive. We're going to show the court that this is attempted financial elder abuse, not a competency issue. He prepared a counter-petition requesting that Tyler and Madison be ordered to repay the $33,400 they'd received, plus legal fees and damages for emotional distress. Even if we don't win the money back, it shows the court what this is really about. The morning of the hearing, I wore my best black suit and carried myself with all the professional dignity I'd maintained throughout 4 decades of business meetings. Judge Martinez had a reputation for fairness in elder rights cases, but my heart still pounded as I sat beside Patrick at the defendant's table. Across the courtroom, Tyler avoided my eyes completely while Madison stared at me with cold determination. To them, this was purely business. To me, it was about survival as an independent adult. Their attorney, Mr. Fenton, opened with a polished presentation. Your Honor, Mrs. Hart has shown clear signs of decline. She abruptly cut off financial support to her family without reasonable explanation, installed unnecessary security measures, and has isolated herself under the influence of manipulative neighbors. Madison was called to testify first. She dabbed her eyes with tissues and spoke in a voice calculated to generate sympathy. Evelyn has always been like a second mother to me, but lately she's become hostile, paranoid, and confused. We're only trying to help her manage her affairs before she makes irreversible mistakes." Patrick's cross-examination was methodical and devastating. "Mrs. Cole, when was the last time you contacted Evelyn without asking for financial assistance?" Silence. "Is it true that you told her she wasn't a special person on your wedding day?" Madison's face flushed. Those words were taken out of context. What context makes that statement acceptable to say to someone who had contributed over $30,000 to your household? She had no answer. "Mrs. Cole, how much money did you receive from Mrs. Hart over the past 3 years?" I don't know the exact amount." Patrick handed her a document. "This is Mrs. Hart's financial analysis. Does $33,400 sound accurate?" Madison's voice became barely audible. "Maybe." "And how much of that money have you repaid?" "None, but we never agreed to repay it." "So you received over $30,000 in gifts, excluded the giver from your wedding, and now want control of her remaining assets?" Madison had no response. Tyler's testimony followed the same pattern. "My mom has always been generous, but she's become irrational. She's being manipulated by people who don't understand her usual behavior." Patrick leaned forward. "Mr. Hart, have you received over $33,000 from your mother in the past 3 years?" Tyler fumbled with his response. "Maybe. I don't know the exact amount." "How many times have you visited your mother without needing money or assistance?" Another long silence. "When was the last time you invited your mother to a social event or celebration?" Tyler couldn't provide a single example. "Mr. Hart, isn't it true that you and your wife plan to exclude your mother from your wedding while continuing to accept her financial support?" We didn't plan it that way." "But that's exactly what happened, isn't it?" Tyler had no answer. Mr. Connors testified about my security cameras and supposed erratic behavior. But under cross-examination, Patrick revealed that he'd never actually spoken to me about his concerns and had no knowledge of my mental state beyond seeing cameras on my house. The tide turned completely when our witnesses took the stand. Aaron Blake explained how Madison had deceived him about the insurance form, confirming that I took no prescription medications that would affect cognitive function, and showed no signs of impairment during our regular interactions. Dr. Moore presented her evaluation results, testifying that my cognitive abilities tested above average for my age group, and that I showed excellent judgment and decision-making capacity. She also noted that my decision to protect my finances showed appropriate self-preservation instincts. Mr. Donnelly from the bank described my thoughtful approach to protecting my accounts, emphasizing that my decisions were well-reasoned and appropriate for someone preventing financial exploitation. Mrs. Whitfield and several other neighbors testified about my independence, social engagement, and clear thinking. My former supervisor, Margaret, appeared via video call to confirm my professional competence and ethical judgment. When I finally took the stand, my voice was steady and confident. "Your Honor, I want to tell you about a pale pink dress hanging in my closet. I bought it specifically to wear to my son's wedding. There's also a sealed envelope in my desk drawer containing $1,000 that was meant to be their wedding gift. Neither item was ever used because I wasn't invited to the celebration I'd helped finance." I paused, making sure my words carried the full weight of their betrayal. For 3 years, I provided Tyler and Madison with $33,400 in financial support. I covered their rent, bought their groceries, paid for their emergencies, and purchased their furniture. I did this because I believed I was helping family members who loved and valued me. When Madison told me I wasn't special enough to attend their wedding, she taught me that our relationship was purely transactional. I'm simply treating it as such going forward. What I provided Tyler and Madison was never love returned. It was a commercial transaction disguised as family obligation. When they decided I wasn't special enough to witness their marriage, they showed me exactly what I meant to them. I'm responding accordingly. Patrick's closing argument was powerful. This is not incompetence, Your Honor. This is a woman reclaiming her dignity and protecting herself from systematic financial exploitation. The evidence shows that Mrs. Hart's decisions are not only competent, but necessary for her financial survival. Judge Martinez deliberated for 2 hours before returning with his verdict. The petition for guardianship is denied. Mrs. Hart has demonstrated full competence throughout these proceedings. The evidence clearly shows this case was motivated by financial interest rather than genuine concern for Mrs. Hart's well-being, he continued. Furthermore, the court finds that the petitioners have engaged in what appears to be systematic financial exploitation of an elderly person. While this court cannot order repayment of gifts freely given, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential elder abuse charges. Relief washed over me like a physical release. When the gavel struck, it felt like chains breaking. Tyler and Madison gathered their papers and left the courtroom without a word. I caught one last glimpse of my son's face. There might have been regret there, but it was far too late for that to matter. The consequences of their failed legal gambit spread quickly through their lives. Within 3 weeks, Tyler and Madison had to move to a smaller apartment in a less desirable neighborhood. Madison, who hadn't worked in over 2 years, was forced to find employment at a retail store downtown making $12 per hour. Tyler picked up additional shifts at his current job, but their combined income was barely half of what they'd been accustomed to living on with my subsidies. I learned these details from Mrs. Whitfield, whose sister lived in their new apartment complex. According to her reports, they were struggling to cover basic expenses without my monthly support. Their car had been repossessed when they couldn't make payments, and they were using public transportation. Madison had to give up her gym membership, regular hair appointments, and the cosmetic procedures I'd unknowingly funded. The district attorney's office contacted me about potential elder abuse charges, but I declined to pursue criminal prosecution. The public humiliation and financial consequences were punishment enough. Meanwhile, I was experiencing freedom I hadn't felt in years. With my monthly expenses back under control and my savings account protected from their constant emergencies, I could finally make choices based on what I wanted rather than what they needed. I booked a 2-week cruise to Alaska that I'd been postponing for 3 years, spending $3,200 on a balcony cabin with all the amenities I'd denied myself while funding their lifestyle. I joined a watercolor painting class at the community center and discovered I had genuine talent for landscapes. I even bought a new car. Nothing extravagant, but reliable and comfortable, chosen entirely for my own preferences. Most importantly, I established a trust fund through Patrick's law firm with specific provisions for protecting elderly people from financial exploitation. Half of my estate will now go to organizations that help seniors recognize and escape from manipulative family members. The other half will go to a scholarship fund for students studying accounting and financial planning. Patrick helped me create what he called a financial firewall. Legal structures that would prevent anyone from accessing my assets, even if I became incapacitated. My medical decisions would be handled by a professional advocate, not family members with financial interests. Tyler and Madison never apologized. They never acknowledged the years of sacrifice I'd made or the humiliation they'd caused. But I no longer needed their recognition to validate my worth. 6 months after the court hearing, I received a single text message from Tyler. "Mom, we're sorry things got so complicated. Maybe we can work something out." I deleted it without responding. Some bridges, once burned completely, can't be rebuilt with simple apologies. A year later, Mrs. Whitfield informed me that Tyler and Madison had divorced. The financial stress and blame over losing my support had destroyed their marriage. Tyler moved back in with Madison's parents, while she continued working retail and living in a studio apartment. Both were reportedly struggling with debt and had filed for bankruptcy. I felt no satisfaction in their misery, but I felt no guilt either. They had made their choices when they decided I wasn't special enough to include in their most important moment. The consequences were simply the natural result of losing someone who had been truly special to their financial survival. Today, at 72, I finally understand the difference between being loved and being used. I have genuine friendships with people who value my company rather than my bank account. I make decisions based on my own well-being rather than their endless emergencies. My new life is smaller in some ways, but infinitely richer. I volunteer at a senior center helping other elderly people recognize financial exploitation. I've become something of an expert on protecting seniors from manipulative family members, and I speak regularly at community events about the warning signs. The pale pink dress still hangs in my closet, and the sealed envelope with $1,000 remains in my desk drawer. I keep them as reminders of the day I learned my true worth. Not as a source of money, but as a person deserving of respect and inclusion. Tyler and Madison taught me that I wasn't special enough to be included in their most important moments. In return, I taught them exactly how special I'd actually been to their daily survival. The lesson cost them everything they'd taken for granted, but some education is worth its price in consequences.